With a 4-point night in the Sabres win in Winnipeg, let's look back on Ryan McLeod, the trade that brought him here, the season he has had so far, and let's look ahead to his contract situation. Plus, a sneaky-looking conspiracy puzzle to put together on the Sabres GM search that maybe is ongoing right now. Just maybe. We'll talk about it coming up on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up? Welcome in, everybody, to the Locked On Sabres podcast, and thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on our YouTube channel where you can watch the show. Be sure to like and subscribe us there. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Sabres win over Winnipeg on Sunday, and we've got a lot to get to. Not on the game. We recapped that yesterday. If you missed Sunday's show, be sure to check it out. We don't often do Sunday shows, but we got it in there because we had a couple of games to recap. Today, let's look at Ryan McLeod. And, you know, when I say the Sabres might have a GM search going right now, they probably don't. But there's a reason I'm bringing it up. There's an interesting thing happening on social media right now that has piqued my interest, and I want to get to it coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. As always, you want to hit us up on our text club, you can do that at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. At least that's where you can sign up for, and then you can text us thereafter, get text alerts from us as well. I did drop this sneaking suspicion that Joe Marino from Sabre Twitter actually picked up on, and then I carried it through to the text club. So we'll get to that coming up in a moment here. One question I wanted to get to, though, from the text club here on the show to kick things off. I got a good question on Devin Levi that I actually had to go and try to find what was being said or what the rule was on Devin Levi for a certain question. And one texter asked, can Levi go to Rochester next year? After he signs an extension, he's an RFA at the end of the year. And we were talking about his contract, and I thought, probably he's in the AHL, so he's not getting anything big here. Maybe a 2-year deal for like $1.5 million, $2 million at most. Maybe if you're Levi, you say, actually, I'd rather sign a 1-year deal and then get to restricted free agency again the following year. Because next year, if I prove that I'm ready to be in the NHL and maybe even take some of the net away from Luukkonen, that maybe he thinks he could cash out even earlier next year. So the question, though, about his AHL eligibility is a good one, because we had this question about Luukkonen a couple of years back, and it kind of snuck up on us, Luukkonen not being eligible to play in the AHL. Remember, when Levi showed up, 7 games, almost carried the Sabres to the playoffs, we went into that offseason thinking Levi's the starting goalie, number 1. And that the number 2 job was probably going to be Eric Comrie, because Comrie was under contract and Luukkonen was not. Or maybe Luukkonen was, but either way, there was a dilemma because we knew they didn't want to have 3 goalies. And Luukkonen was waiver eligible because he had played 5 professional seasons. Now, 2 of those were in the AHL, where he didn't play any NHL games. And the rule is, looking it up, that to be waiver eligible, you got to play 5 professional seasons or 75 NHL games. Luukkonen had completed the 5 seasons, not the 75 games. Levi hasn't completed either. He's in year 3 as a professional because he didn't play 2 years remember, Luukkonen played in Cincinnati for a while in the ECHL, and then Rochester too, of course, for a couple of years before he got here. And Levi hasn't done that. Levi showed right up. That was year 1. Last year was year 2. This year was year 3. And he is at 39 games, so he's not near it. So yes, Levi can play in Rochester again next year. I don't predict that he will, but he could. I didn't predict this year that he would. I didn't predict last year that he would. So you don't know with goalies, but yes, he can go down if you need to. Now, let's get to the do my best Brian Windhorst impression here. There is something afoot right now with the Sabres and their general manager. Because I talked about on yesterday's episode, does it mean anything that Terry Pegula was on the trip? He was on the road trip. He was sitting far away from Kevyn Adams. I might have over-exaggerated, I guess, looking back on how far away he was sitting from Adams. It wasn't 7 seats. It was like 3, but there was a hallway in between, and it was the complete opposite sides of the booth. So the box that they were in. And I do think that that's a weird look still, that Pegula and Adams sat so far away from each other in Utah when they were watching the game. So Pegula goes on the trip. And then I'm scrolling Twitter, and there's Joe Marino, who we've had on the show before. He actually did our all-time Sabre draft this past offseason or 2 off seasons ago with us. Formerly of the Charging Buffalo, Joe, big Sabre Twitter guy. And he tweets out that Jarmo Kekalainen, the former general manager of the Columbus Blue Jackets, who, if you look right now, go look up like available general managers, veteran general managers especially. Kekalainen's name is one of the first that you're going to see. Long-time Blue Jackets general manager, one of the few European general managers that has had a job in the NHL. And he was the GM in Columbus for 11 years, 2013 to 2024. This is his first year not being a GM in a long time. So his name is somebody that you could think about. And I think we've mentioned maybe briefly, we did a show a couple of months ago on all the different names and people that could replace Kevyn Adams. And his name was one of many that we mentioned. He followed Joe Marino from Sabres Twitter. Now, you might think, okay, well, that doesn't mean anything. And on the surface, I would agree that that doesn't have to mean absolutely anything. But let me supply some context that might make you think just a little bit. Jarmo Kekalainen is not the most active Twitter goer. He tweeted on February 13th, here we go. And it is him at the Four Nations tournament for Finland and Team USA. Of course, he's from Finland, so he obviously would have been rooting for Finland in that game, but whatever, doesn't matter. He had not tweeted before that since January 12th. And again, once in a while he tweets, but not very often. He is following 348 people. 348 people. And if you go to who he's following, and I did this before the show, you scroll through, you find, counted them up, exactly 4 and only 4 that I could find active NHL beat reporters. 4 guys that are covering the league that are in his group of followers, or people he is following, excuse me. And 2 of them, Aaron Portzline is one of them. Jeff Sabota is another. Those are Blue Jackets reporters. And that's not surprising, right? He used to work as the Blue Jackets general manager. So I've got 2 guys from Columbus. And then I'm scrolling down. Joe Marino, he unfollowed. Maybe because Joe pointed it out. And he thought maybe I don't want that out there because of, Sabre fans thinking he might be the next GM. But, you're looking. And you find Lance Lysowski and Mike Harrington, both of the Buffalo News. What are they doing in there? Here's the Brian Windhorst moment. What are they doing in there? Why you're only following 4 hockey reporters, beat reporters, and 2 are the team you used to work for, and 2 are Buffalo. And you followed another guy that talks Sabres on Twitter, and then unfollowed him after it was pointed out. Interesting. Just connecting dots here, and maybe it's absolutely nothing, as we kind of went through yesterday. Maybe, and again, maybe even probably you want to say. The idea that Pegula sitting so far away from Adams is meaningful could mean absolutely nothing. Jarmo Kekalainen, maybe the top veteran general manager that is on the market right now, is following 2 Sabre beat guys. Maybe it means absolutely nothing. Maybe he just wants to see what kind of tire fire is going on in Buffalo. They're interesting. Or maybe he has no connection to Terry Pegula. They haven't spoken or anything. And maybe he's just thinking, this could be the case, by the way, that if you're Jarmo Kekalainen, you've been a GM for 11 years, you want to be a general manager again, what team might you be interested in? How it's going? What's happening on the day-to-day? You might, on your own initiative, follow the Buffalo Sabres because you might think that's one job you could get, even if you haven't spoken to anybody that works in the organization. So that could very well be the case. It does not have to mean that Terry Pegula is about to hire Jarmo Kekalainen. All it means is that Jarmo wants to stay up to date on the Buffalo Sabres. And I'm at least taking that to mean that he's interested. I'm willing to take that jump. It's only just a guy following two people on Twitter. But again, the context of who he follows, two of the four reporters he follows are Sabre guys, Mike Harrington and Lance Lysowski. He's curious. And why wouldn't you be if you were him? Veteran GM in the league and you're looking for a potential job opening. Well, Buffalo might be the one. Jarmo Kekalainen, if it did happen, would be the first general manager hired by the Buffalo Sabres that had previous general manager experience since the 1980s. It has been 4 decades since the Sabres have hired somebody with a background like Kekalainen. Now, I'm not ready to do a deep dive on Jarmo Kekalainen. I think something more meaningful would have to come out for me to do that. If you want some brief spark notes on Kekalainen, he had a very tough time keeping star players to stay in Columbus. Very tough time. Panarin left while he was there. Bobrovsky left. Jeff Carter was a whole fiasco when he was there. I think even maybe was Rick Nash maybe gone by the time that Kekalainen got there. He actually might have been gone. But either way, he had a very similar, situation in Columbus that he did here, where he couldn't get star players to play in this market. But he had a few more successes than the Sabres have had here, because he did go out and trade for Panarin. Like, he would make the swings. He would go out and get Bobrovsky. He went out and he did land the late, great Johnny Gaudreau in free agency a couple of years ago when nobody saw that coming. So, not to say he was a perfect GM. There are definitely some bad parts of him being a GM. But, if you want a veteran GM, this is the guy. This might be the guy for you. When we come back, Ryan McLeod, where we've been, look back on the trade with Matt Savoie and the contract. Very interesting contract situation with McLeod coming up. We'll get to that here on the Locked On Sabres podcast right after this. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by Wonderful Pistachios. I can't show you my Wonderful Pistachios right now, the big bag, because they're actually in my car, in my golf bag, because I keep them in there when I'm going to the simulator or wherever. And, the guys want to order pizza or whatever, because, the simulators now, you got the private bays. And I'm not eating pizza during the week. I'm trying to eat healthier. So I need a snack to hold me over and not make me want to cave. What am I doing? I've got the big bag of pistachios, and that's all I need. Looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios, one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, which gives you over 10% of your daily value. There's the no shells variety. That's my favorite, because that's the grab and go ease of it. But if you like the shells, that's satisfying crack of opening, that's an option for you as well. It is like a snack meditation. So whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. Get snackin' and get crackin' with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Again, wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. The Sabres hosting the Senators tomorrow. Dylan Cousins' return. We'll look at the very, very early returns on that trade. Amazingly, Senators fans already taking a victory lap on that one, despite they're like 6 games into it. No doubt Cousins has looked good and Norris isn't playing. So it looks good early, but it's so early. It's week 1, basically. Now, That's one trade that people have already taken a victory lap on. There was another trade earlier this season, before the season, that I think a lot of people in Edmonton and people in Edmonton were taking a victory lap. And I think nationally, you saw a lot of takes questioning this trade that Kevyn Adams made. And it's turned into one of his few W's. Trading Matt Savoie to Edmonton for Ryan McLeod and, remember, Tyler Tullio. They got an add-on to that trade, a former fifth-round pick of Edmonton who had played in the AHL. AHLer. And by the way, if you're wondering, if we even forgot, Tullio was in that deal. Tullio's not in the organization really anymore. I mean, he is. He's Sabre property still, but he played 30 games for the Amerks this year. He scored 1 goal. He had 6 assists. This is a right winger, by the way, Tullio. So 7 points in 30 games, 30 penalty minutes in 30 games. So they loaned him to the Calgary Wranglers of the AHL. They didn't want him playing on the AHL team anymore. So that could tell you all you need to know about him. That asset's at a 0, but who cares? Because the real reason the trade was made was it was Savoie for McLeod. And Matt Larkin, who I like a lot, Daily Faceoff, has a lot of good stuff, content throughout the season. One of my favorite national hockey reporters or writers. He is getting dragged a little bit by Sabres Twitter because he compared the trade. He said it was one of the worst trades he'd ever seen before the year. And I understand why. But he compared it to the Martin Erat for Philip Forsberg trade, which was a deadline deal a little over a decade ago where Washington traded their best prospect, Philip Forsberg, that everybody knew was going to turn into a great player. And they sent him away for Martin Erat, who was a rental. Couple of months of Martin Erat. And I think I probably even said this at the time, that I understood the reference. It's a player, it's a top prospect being traded for a veteran player that nobody believes is worth that much. But the key difference has showed itself, which is Erat was a month or two in Washington, and that was going to be it. And he was an older player, so there wasn't really a future there. McLeod, 25 years old, is an RFA at the end of the year. This is a multi-year acquisition. That was the first difference. And then McLeod has had the season he's had. And again, it's been one of the brightest stories of the Sabres season is they grabbed this guy. They traded one of their prospects for this guy who was a defensive specialist in Edmonton. And he is turned in. Really, you couldn't call him a two-way center. You know, when guys get called two-way centers, oftentimes it is because they are great at defense. But sometimes you forget about the offensive part of it. McLeod, I wouldn't have called a two-way guy. I would have called him a one-way guy. The one-way was the defensive game. This year, he's really, truly been a two-way player because he is producing offensively. 4 points against Winnipeg on Sunday night. 4 points. And now a player that had peaked at 12 goals and 30 points in 66 games is already at 17 goals and 42 points. He's going to flirt with 20 goals and 50 points. And he's doing it center where he's winning all these faceoffs and he's maintained that high level of defensive play. Savoie, meanwhile, has had a nice year. He's had a nice year. He has not blown the doors off the AHL. He's not having the year Isak Rosen is having down in Rochester right now. But Savoie was an AHL All-Star. He has 43 points in 54 games. Saw a good tweet from Matt Savoie comparing the two. McLeod, 42 points in the NHL this year. Savoie, 43 points in the AHL this year. And again, offense wasn't even supposed to be the reason they got McLeod. But Savoie's had a nice year. 17 goals, 26 points. He got a brief call-up for Edmonton. He had a nice first game. He got an assist on a Draisaitl goal, and then it didn't really go well after that, and he got sent down again. Not ready for the NHL yet. The more time goes on, and I think Savoie's going to be a nice player. I still think Savoie's going to be a nice player. I really like his game. I once compared him to Danny Briere. I don't think he'll be as good as Briere, but his game really does remind me of Briere. Again, though, I don't think he's going to be as good as Briere. He's the guy you probably would have wanted to trade right now. if you look back on the prospects that the Sabres could have theoretically dealt for McLeod, Benson obviously off the table. Like, for me, I think Benson's unbelievable defensively. He's got some work to do offensively, but I think that's coming. So no Benson. The other two guys that went in the same first round that Savoie did. Savoie went first, remember, ninth overall. You weren't trading Kulich. Kulich's ahead of Savoie, and Kulich's had a great year, one of the better rookie goal scorers on the season. And he looks like a top 6 center already, and probably will be next year again. And then there's Noah Östlund, who at the time of the trade, most would have probably ranked behind Savoie. And on the season, I guess you could still say Savoie with 43 points versus Östlund's 29 points would have the advantage, but Östlund's only played 40 games, and he's been on fire lately. Hat trick over the weekend, and then another goal yesterday. 4 goals over the weekend. He is one of the most dangerous players in that whole league right now, and he looks amazing for the Amerks, the way he's finishing and producing. So right now, I almost feel like you would rather have traded Savoie even than Östlund. So I think they kind of traded the perfect guy. And again, part of this isn't that Savoie versus Östlund or Savoie versus Kulich. It's that the Sabres have so many of these guys. They have so many top 6 potential forwards that are all scheduled to arrive at the NHL at around the same time. They can't all make the team, and you got to diversify. You can't have all young scorers at the same time. You might want a veteran two-way player, and that's McLeod. McLeod is fitting that age too, where, hey, one day when Östlund is in Buffalo and Kulich is a consistent 25, 30 goal scorer, hopefully, you're going to need guys that play down the depth chart that can play in all situations. That was never going to be Matt Savoie. Matt Savoie was going to be an offensive player for the Buffalo Sabres one day. They have enough of those. Well, I guess they need more in theory, but they have a lot of volume in that department. They don't have a lot of volume in the two-way center department, especially. McLeod fit that need stylistically, and he fit that need with his age. So to me, you look back on that trade, and it looks pretty sweet, and the logic for why they made it has held up. They didn't just strike lightning in a bottle and get lucky that this guy had a career year. No, McLeod's given them the things that they wanted him to give them. The offense is just kind of a bonus, in my opinion. But maybe that's going to hold. Maybe that will continue. So now let's get to what's going to be next for Ryan McLeod. And I do want to speak some caution here, that I think there is a little regression coming for Ryan McLeod, but I don't think that should impact, 1, the contract decision, and 2, what the expectation of him should be going forward. Get to the contract, especially when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Sabres is presented by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, which can add up, and online shopping. I got these golf clothes that are just getting thrown in my face with these algorithms on social media. You can't avoid them. Golf, entertainment, movies. It's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, talking some Ryan McLeod here on the show today off his best game of the season, statistically at least, with 4 points on the night. Again, amazing that he wasn't voted one of the 3 stars of that game. But nonetheless, there's a decision to be made about Ryan McLeod contract-wise coming up. Now, one analysis that I want to throw out there about McLeod that I've kind of teased with or want to keep mentioning is to not expect him to score 20 goals every year. Maybe he could if the ice time goes up. And that is something that could offset the regression that I'm about to say. Right now, he's playing 16:39 a night for this season. But he's played 20-plus minutes 5 games in a row. I personally don't believe that's in his future. I don't think they want that for him. I don't think that's probably what you get the best out of him. I will say, it's almost amazing how well he is doing with the added ice time. You might have thought, I would have guessed, all right, he was a fourth-line center in Edmonton. He's worthy of more play than that. To get the best out of him, you put him at third-line center. So the Sabres did that, and he answered the bell. Then they got into a pinch injury-wise. Thompson had to move around at times. Kulik was out of the lineup. And then they had to bump him up to second-line center. And McLeod kind of answered the bell doing that, playing 19 minutes a night, 20 minutes a night, 18 minutes a night. So then, in a couple of these games recently, he's kind of playing more like a number one center. He's played with Thompson. He's played with Tuck. He's playing on the power play. He's playing the most minutes. I would have definitely believed he was capable of jumping up from a fourth-line center in Edmonton to a third-line center. I even could have got behind the idea, I probably wouldn't have thought it was likely, but I could have got behind the idea that he could even be a second-line center in a pinch. I never would have believed that he could be a number one center, even in a pinch. I would have thought you play him 20 to 23 minutes a night like he's been playing, and it's not going to go well. He's going to get exposed by better competition. He's not going to produce enough offensively. He's not going to produce enough scoring chances to warrant that type of ice time. And he has. He really has. Again, though, I think goal scoring wise, he's 22% on the year shooting percentage. That's unsustainable. He's 14.2% for his career. If you knock that down to 14.2%, you're talking more about 13, 14, 15 goals right now, and maybe he gets to 17, 16, 17 by season's end. I think that's probably more the player that you're talking about. I don't think McLeod's going to score 20 goals very often in his career. But again, that's me thinking that he's more of a 16 to 17 minute a night player going forward. If he is going to graduate to a 19, 20 minute a night player, then I could be open to there's more. But I'm not thinking right now that that's the amount of ice time he's playing in the future. But I guess we'll see. If he keeps playing like this, maybe they will continue to do that. So that gets to the contract and how much he's thrived. It's a career year. And are the Sabres, or should they be spooked at all by the times they've paid guys after one big year and the amount of times that it's kind of blown up in their face? It hasn't every time. They did it with Tage Thompson, and that looks like a home run right now. He's a $7.1 million cap hit for a player. It's probably worth $9 million plus. That worked. Dylan Cousins, they paid him after one big year, not working so well. Mattias Samuelsson, they paid him after 1 year, and that's gone about as poorly as humanly possible. Owen Power is another one where I guess they paid Owen Power after 2 years more so. So, it's worked once and it hasn't looked so great the other times. The Sabres, though, have this thing where they kind of have to pay guys right away because they rightfully are fearful of the guy leaving eventually, which might happen with Bo Byram right now. It might happen with JJ Peterka at some point. We'll see those two if they're able to get signed in this offseason. Well, what about McLeod? You might just want to sign McLeod and not even have to put up with that headache and say, yeah, I know it hasn't worked out well for us a couple of times, signing guys after 1 year. The difference with McLeod is he's at least a little bit older. Cousins was younger. Samuelsson was younger when you signed him after one big year, and they regressed after that. McLeod already being 25 years old, like you could get to, well, this was his natural progression. He's now more of a veteran player. He's played almost 300 games in the NHL. Well, I guess that's not too different from where Cousins was at. Either way, a little bit older. Maybe that's meaningful to them. So the contract that I'll throw out there, you tell me if you think it's fair. I'm thinking for McLeod, 5 years, $4.5 million per year. that more than doubles his salary where it's at right now. And I think you're not locking him in to the long-term deal. You let him hit free agency again at 30 years old. A lot of players now are looking for that. And you might think that he would be open to or even want the possibility of getting another contract when he's 30 years old rather than being tied to 32 years old. And then it's harder to get a deal at that point. So 5 years, $4.5 million per year is the contract that I'd be looking for. If on both sides. If you're McLeod, this is the opportunity that you get to play and continue to grow as a player. You might not get that everywhere. He didn't have it in Edmonton. And if you're the Sabres, you sign a 5-year deal. You limit the risk a little bit for a guy that's had one big year. You don't have to sign him to an 8-year contract. And you lock him up long enough to where you're not thinking about in the immediate future the idea of him leaving. So to me, I think cap-wise that works too. Again, you're more than doubling his salary. $4.5 million over 5 years. That's the contract I'm thinking of for Ryan McLeod right now. Let me know your thoughts. If you've got a thought on my Jarmo Kekalainen connect the dots thing, although it's really more Joe Marino's. I just picked up on it after the fact. Let me know what you think. Join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres if you would like to get us on the text club for that. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. We'll take an early look at the Cousins for Josh Norris trade. We'll see if Josh Norris is back on the ice practicing. If we have any signs that he might be back to play, it'd be kind of, not a great feeling if Cousins returns and Norris is already hurt for that game and not playing it. You think Ottawa fans are already taking a victory lap. They'll take another one tomorrow if that happens. So we'll talk about tomorrow's game, the trade, and what we've got ahead coming up on the Locked On Sabres podcast. League-wide topics. If you want the big stories all across the NHL, be sure to make your second listen Locked On NHL, available wherever you get your podcasts, including on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcasts. We'll talk to you tomorrow here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.